Doop-a-doo-doo, a-dee-da-da-da, watching movies, recording vlogs, doop-a-dee-da, fucking cables everywhere. Oh, hi guys. It's another episode of this movie vlog thing. That's exciting. This is gonna be my first vlog where I try to actually just do a whole week in one. This is a lot. I don't know why of all the weeks this had to be the one where a movie just like boom 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 boom, like everything that you'd want to talk about for hours on end. But here we are. I'm trying to make this pretty short because again it's 7 movies and I don't know why I thought that would be an easy task. I'm an idiot. Before I get started, quick note as far as the YouTube channel. I know this isn't why most people subscribe. I don't think this is why anyone subscribes to my channel. I will have more, whackadaisical, Vinegar Syndrome centric stuff, a lot more B-movie stuff. I'm going to be talking about 70s porn very soon. It's going to get wild, but and that's actually one reason why I'm trying to do these once a week, just because I need to have more time to do those, and I can't just be making movie vlogs every day, or else I'll go insane. Let's talk about some movies. First up, coming out 1 week ago exactly, Kid Thing, directed by David Zellner. This is from 2012, and Kid Thing is one of those movies that you got to wonder, is this a comedy? So it follows this little girl, and she has no real she has a dad, and they don't say it in the movie that he's her dad, but I watched an interview with David and Nathan Zellner. Nathan is David's brother. He produces the movies, and they also shot this one. So they work very closely together, which is nice. That's so sweet that two brothers can work so closely together. She has a dad. They live on a farm. He doesn't pay too much attention to her and doesn't seem to really take his responsibilities as a father very seriously. And she just kind of spends her days doing whatever she wants. And she might be a bit of a sociopath. She's a very unlikable child. She just goes around causing havoc and doing awful things. She basically robs a grocery store. She shoots a guy with paintballs for no good reason. She throws stuff at incoming cars. Just general mean-spiritedness. There's one scene in particular where she's so cruel, and honestly, I might steal it for something in the future. Like I might take some very direct inspiration because it is glorious. And yeah, so the main crux of the story is she finds this hole in the woods, and there's something in that hole. I'm not going to spoil it, but how she I guess deals with that is a kind of defines her character and how she reacts to situations and the level of compassion that she has in her being, which is to say, not a whole fucking lot. Interesting to note, if you liked Kumiko the Treasure Hunter, this is same director, so same creative team behind that has made this film. This is a very small movie. It feels very small, and it's honestly not the most memorable film. It's not bad. Like I think you should watch it. It's a very enjoyable film if you like comedy that's so dark that you're not even sure if it's comedy anymore. Please, watch this movie. You'll have a good time. But it kind of feels unnecessary at the same time. And I think there's a lot of indie movies that feel that way. At Sundance one year, I think it was the year before last, Davion showed there, and it was a film that basically was the story of this little black boy living in somewhere in the South. I don't remember where it took place, but he lived somewhere in the South, and just his life, his trials and tribulations. There's like a robbery at one point. It's one of those movies that is kind of a slice of life film with a very dramatic edge, and it's beautifully shot and really well done. Great acting, everything like that. Everything feels very genuine, but at the end of the day, it still feels a little inconsequential. And I think it's just because they're filmmakers working within their means and trying to tell, again, a slice of life story that can feel not quite as impactful as something that's a bit more, I hesitate to use the word written, but, like more structured than that and more filmic, I suppose. And that's nothing against these movies. It's just you walk away feeling like, oh yeah, that was a movie, which is fine. I think there's plenty of great movies that you can watch that are just sort of, yeah, that's good, cool, moving on, and still get plenty out of them, even if you don't, remember them in the next 30 days. Let's see. This is also the final role of Susan Tyrrell, which Forbidden Zone, if you haven't watched that, she's great. Also just watched The Demolitionist, which features Susan Tyrrell in a villain role. This is completely unrelated beyond Susan Tyrrell, but watch The Demolitionist. It leaves Prime January 31st. I'm sure there's another way to watch it beyond that, but that's where I watched it. Really fun movie. Kind of a RoboCop ripoff. Next up, from, let's see, Tuesday the 14th, Suzaki Paradise Red Light. From 1956. This is directed by Yuzo Kawashima. This is one of the exclusives this month on Mubi. I feel like this might go into next month too, because it's a series of Yuzo Kawashima films, and I'm very excited to see more of this. I had heard of Kawashima before, and how he was a big influence on other directors from that time period. Kind of helped push the kind of Japanese neorealism movement of the time. And this Suzaki Paradise Red Light is the story of this couple who they're leading a hard knock life. They're not doing too well, and they need some money. They have nowhere to go, so they wind up staying in this bar. This very kind woman who owns the bar lets them use it as lodging and employs the girl and helps the guy find another job. And unfortunately, this bar basically is on the other side of a bridge that leads into the red light district. So bunch of hookers. And you could almost think of the bridge, and this might be me looking too much into it, that happens all the time, but you could think of the bridge as kind of a literal bridge into hell, and I guess heaven being sort of these two characters, regaining their relationship and falling back in love. At the point that we meet them, they're falling apart a little bit. I think part of it is the man, he feels inadequate in his current role, which I feel like is a very Japanese thing. Well, actually, it's kind of just a man thing, I guess. Either which way. She winds up falling in with this rich guy, and he finds a job and potential love interest there, and kind of their trials and tribulations from that point on. And this bar is sort of like a purgatory, kind of a way station for them. And you kind of get that idea as the movie goes, how these various characters make their way in and then out. And you can definitely see it as sort of a neutral middle ground where people decide if they are going to, make poor decisions or not. I loved Suzaki Paradise. I want to watch it again. Most of these I watched while I was very tired because I'm still getting used to the whole stay-at-home dad thing. But it's beautifully photographed. It feels very naturalistic and strangely warm. It is black and white photography again, 1956. It's obviously shot on a budget, and but it gets characters. You get the idea that Kawashima, he understands these working class characters. He understands these people who are downtrodden and just looking for a way out. I wouldn't say it's an inspirational story. It gets kind of sad, but it works really well, and you feel like you know these characters pretty much right off the bat. So I highly recommend Suzaki Paradise. It was one of my favorites. It wasn't my absolute favorite from this batch, but it was one of my favorites. Next up, Black Mother from 2018, directed by Khalik Allah. So Khalik Allah is this guy who he was a second unit director on Lemonade, Beyonce's kind of epic music video project. He did another film before this. I'm not going to say that. I don't need that kind of heat on me. But he directed another movie that is apparently really good, about an hour long, that I really want to watch. I haven't been able to find it just yet. I admittedly have not looked very hard because life, but he's got just a great eye. This guy is an amazing photographer. I read in an interview with him that he really wanted to show off his range as a photographer. The film itself is shot in everything from Super 8 to high definition. A good chunk of it is shot, I believe, on 16 millimeter, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It basically just documents the current state of Jamaica and shows us Jamaica. It's a lot of the streets of Jamaica, convenience stores, countryside. It's a nice, healthy portrait of Jamaica, showing us all the great stuff, all the bad stuff, but with the eye of someone who must have lived there because he really appreciates it and loves it to the point where he's willing to point out its flaws just as much as point out all the positives. Brimming with empathy is how I could probably best put it. And that makes sense. Caligula spent a lot of his childhood in Jamaica. He is half Jamaican, half Iranian, which is a fun mix. That's a lot of history right there. And yeah, I highly recommend this one. I don't have a lot to say about it because it's very straightforward. You can look into a lot of it, but as far as the presentation itself, it's very straightforward. It's just a series of images with narration from various people talking. Once you put all of it together, you get a very lovely portrait of Jamaica. And I honestly know more about Jamaica now than I did before, while not being directly told too many facts. It's a nice learning experience for someone whose experience with Jamaica is really just that one bobsledding movie. Very interesting. Next up was Earth from 1930. This was directed by Alexander Dovchenko. I don't know. I don't know how to say anything. This is a silent film. If you don't like silent films, then maybe don't watch this. I personally love a good silent film, and I think this is the kind of silent film you show someone who doesn't really watch silent films, if that makes any sense. It's a great example of the montage movement of the time. Of course, Sergei Eisenstein with Battleship Potemkin had really revolutionized cinema, and Dovchenko, I can't say it. This guy, this director man, was another one of those directors of the time. He wasn't quite as lauded as Eisenstein, but he was still a major director of the period of Russia's kind of collectivist movement, which collectivism is basically what made up communist Russia at the time. Collectivism it refers mainly to farmers and how they kind of come together in a kind of communal way to create crops. A lot of the kind of antagonistic characters in this film are kulaks, and kulaks were peasants who owned more than 8 acres of land. Eventually their land was taken from them fairly violently, which does stain the movie a little bit. It's kind of weird because it's obviously a very pro-communism movie. Russia, 1930, that's going to happen. And so that's tough because knowing how badly this all goes for Russia, it's a little but at the same time, I mean, it's a good piece of propaganda. And if you look beyond the propaganda, it really is about, again, class struggle, and you can see how these farmers had it rough, but also kind of looked up and tried to make the best of things. Yeah, I wouldn't look too much into the story. The story is good, but it's all about pro-collectivism and moving forward into this communist regime that, again, does not turn out very good. But the main thing to watch this movie for is the use of montage. Long story short, up until a certain point, a lot of silent films had a very almost like they're almost shot like plays. They were shot very head-on, just movie. And then Sergei Eisenstein and his ilk just fucking revolutionized it, started adding close-ups and reaction shots, and really editing the way that we view movies today. And the way that Earth is edited is very much like a film you would see today. Like, it is a beautifully photographed film full of interesting faces, full of emotion, and it feels, for the most part, exceptionally raw. And I like that quite a bit. It's much more emotional than Battleship Potemkin. It has much more, I keep using this word, warmth to it. So I highly recommend Earth. You have to look past the communist aspect a little bit, but that's to be expected in this time period. If you already enjoy silent films, or if you want to get into silent films, I think this is a great option. It's very energetic. There's an amazing sequence where they show grain being harvested and the whole process to turning it into bread. I thought that was really fun. It's fairly short. It's only 80-something minutes long. And yeah, Russian silent film. Check it out. Next up is The Image Book. From 2018. This is directed by Jean-Luc Godard. Next up is The Image Book from 2018. This was directed by Jean-Luc Godard. It won a special jury prize at Cannes that year, and I don't love it. I don't love Jean-Luc Godard. I think he's pretentious for the sake of pretension at times. I think this is one example of that. I appreciate what he's trying to do. Basically, the idea behind this film is that the Western world does not treat the Arab world with the same respect as it does other areas, other regions. And from a cinematic standpoint, we have a very kind of narrow view of that world. which is fine and dandy. I appreciate that idea. The way he goes about it, anytime I read a review, and it's always glowing, like gushing reviews about how Jean-Luc Godard is a genius, guys, it's just a montage of images. Like, I get it. They have a path that he has very carefully chosen for them, and they interact with each other in very specific ways. But at the end of the day, he's just taking, mostly for the most part, in the second half he has a bunch of original footage, but for the most part, it is old footage from old movies that he has edited together. He's done a bunch of bullshit coloring to them in post. All things you can do in Adobe Premiere. I don't know how he edited these. I don't know if he used a chemical process. I highly doubt it. I'm pretty sure this is all digital. Not that it takes away from anything, but it just shows how kind of quick it was. And it's just another experimental movie that he made. And he's made a shitload of these. Most of his career post, I don't have a good year for it, but like, let's say post 95, has been very experimental, just playing with editing techniques and digital filmmaking. And it's fine. I don't hate it, but it's not great. And I see all these very just like snobbish people saying, oh, this is the greatest work of the 21st century. Oh, this is better than anything coming out from the major studios. No, it's not. Fuck you. God damn. Like, capitalism bad, multiculturalism good. That's all he's saying. And that's sure. Yes. Capitalism has a lot of problems and multiculturalism is very good. But holy shit, you don't have to make it a fucking chore to watch. And that's what it is, really. It's a chore to watch. It's not the worst thing as far as that kind of boredom aspect. It's not like, I feel like if I was trapped in a theater, it might be easier to watch. But it's not that good. It's not that good. I gave it I think a 2.5 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd. Yeah, it's middle of the road. It has a good message, and I definitely enjoyed the last like third, I think, more than the rest. Once it actually got into that Arab world, instead of just circle jerking through the history of cinema, it got a lot more interesting, a lot more visually impactful as well. When he had his own footage to play with, a lot more impactful. You know, Jean-Luc Godard has always been a very talented filmmaker, but that doesn't mean all of his work is great. And let's be honest here. The remake of Breathless is better than Breathless. That's right, I said it. I don't know. I don't have much to say about this. I get it. I do. But just because something is veiled in, let's say, weird editing choices, doesn't make it great. It's just not how that works. Like, I feel like there's this thing with a lot of more, and I feel like a dullard saying it this way, but artsy critics who, you know, are really focused on the fringe cinema. They see something that's this esoteric, and they're like, ooh, that's for me. And they use a bunch of flowery words to say that it's deep and meaningful and beautiful. And the reality is it's just not that deep. It's just, we need to treat Arabs better in cinema. Multiculturalism is good. Capitalism is bad. And that's it. That's the whole thing. You know, there might be some more little bits and bobs in there that I missed, but at the end of the day, it's just not that interesting. It's not that complicated. And what I find most frustrating is, okay, let's say this is a perfect breakdown of, you know, how we treat Arab cinema. Let's say it's absolutely perfect. It's still esoteric. It's still intended for a small audience, and it's still something that everyone involved knows is not going to get very far. We know that mainstream audiences aren't going to watch it, and if they do, they're going to hate it. It's just facts. All right. Well, how are you getting this message out there, bud? Like, why not just make a proper documentary about how we treat Arab filmmaking? Why not make a narrative film about the same thing? And I get it. He's like 88 years old. He's not going to be making any big, lavish productions anymore, but produce something, you know? From the mind of Jean-Luc Godard, directed by some other Frenchman, comes this riveting tale of Arabian cinema or something. Do that. You're going to get the word out much better. But you don't do that. No, you make something that's up your own ass, that makes you look smart, makes the critics feel smart, and that's it. And then no one gives a shit in the mainstream. That's it. again, I didn't hate Image Book. I know it sounds like I hated it. It's just, there's something about experimental cinema for the sake of experimental cinema that just drives me a little nuts. Anyway, next up is Fireworks from 1997. This was directed by Takashi Kitano, who you might know best as Beat Takashi. For my kind of genre nerds out there, he was the teacher in Battle Royale. He's been in a shitload of movies. He was originally a comedian and a TV host. I think he might still be that. I don't actually know, because I'm not Japanese. I'm not in tune with Japanese culture currently, or ever. But this one might actually be one of my favorite movies of all time now. This was easily my favorite movie of the week, definitely. Top drawer filmmaking. Takeshi Kitano, I'd never actually watched one of his directorial efforts. I don't know why. They were always kind of on the fringe for me, and I think the reason I never watched them was I knew they would be great, and I knew I liked him as an actor, but I thought they were just standard issue Yakuza movies. Like still great, but I thought that they were more just, there's the Yakuza movie, and you watch it, you have a good time, and you move on. I didn't realize just how artistic they really were, and apparently this is his style, is he imbues them with a lot of art, a lot of sort of stoicism, and I'm assuming meaningful characters, because that's what this is, and it's absolutely beautiful to watch. It has a very quiet approach. It does not show a lot of violence. When it does, it's very hard-hitting and impactful. And the cinematography is not the most, from a composition standpoint, it's dynamic, but it's not there's not a lot of movement. It's usually a simple pan or a very simple crane shot. Sometimes it just stays on one image. So it's very simple. When it feels like bringing out the gun, so to speak, it does so, and very beautifully. The story itself follows this cop. He loses his job after a stakeout goes poorly. Two of his partners are shot and killed. Another one is gravely injured and winds up handicapped. And we basically follow how these two men struggle with loss, with grief. So we follow these two guys. His partner, who again is in a wheelchair, he takes up painting, which we see a lot of Kitano's own paintings that he painted during his recovery from a 1995 motorcycle accident, I believe. And they're interesting paintings. They're strange, and they're kind of amateurish, but that's kind of the charm. It feels like this is actually a guy's worldview who has never really painted before, but has just taken it up and kind of is more in tune with the world around him and is looking at things a little differently. And then Kitano's character, his wife has leukemia and is going to die at some point relatively soon. It is terminal, and he wants to take her on like a little road trip. But the problem is, in order to pay for her hospital bills, he's had to take up a debt with the Yakuza, don't you know? And he has to find a way out of that. And of course, things go awry, and as you do. It's a beautiful take on how tragedy can affect our worldview. There is a score that I don't remember the composer's name off the top of my head, but it's a very warm, sometimes whimsical score that really perfectly fits everything. It almost peaks into melodrama without really going all the way there. And there's also a lot of humor to this. It's a little dry, but it's sprinkled just right throughout the film. It's never a film that feels too serious, but at the same time deals with very serious subject matter. I guess the point is it's sort of a masterful juggling act. And I know that a lot of people consider this to be Kitano's masterpiece. It won a shitload of awards, including the Golden Lion, if I'm not mistaken. I always fuck this up. Yep, Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival. And I mean, I understand why. It's, these extreme acts of violence punctuated by long, drawn-out scenes, like when Kitano is just having tea and playing with a puzzle with his wife. He's a very silent character, very stoic, doesn't say much, but he gets a lot out of like little smiles and glances. I really want to watch this again. I don't know if I'll have time to before it leaves Mubi, but I'll probably buy it at some point because, goddamn, this is like next level shit. And I cannot wait to watch more of Kitano's work. I believe this is part of a series. Yeah, this is part of their Takashi Kitano Destroy All Yakuza series. So they'll be showing more of this. We're getting a lot of great Japanese cinema in this first batch of movies. That's pretty dope. I loved it. It's one of the best movies I've ever seen. So check it out. So To the Ends of the World is a French film from 2018. It was in Cannes. It was not in competition, but it did show at Cannes. Directed by this guy's name, and it's a beautiful movie to look at. Like, it is absolutely gorgeous. Sumptuous 35 millimeter photography. Everything. It's a shuttle location in Vietnam. Just beautiful. Like, cannot describe how good looking this is. This I would say maybe the only movie that's better looking from this list is, I guess, Black Mother. Black Mother is a little better looking, but that's mostly because of the textures that you're seeing and like all the variants. But this is, as far as the narrative films go, just great. It stars Gaspard Ulliel, and you might know him from Hannibal Rising. He played Hannibal in Hannibal Rising. That's what most people know him from, I feel like, at least in the United States. And he's great. He has this very serious, this is a theme, stoic character who wants revenge. There was this very real massacre of French troops in 1945, I believe. And the idea is that he is the lone survivor of this massacre, and he wants revenge against this character, Vauban, I think. Anyway, this fictional military guy, and it's kind of his Kurtz. This is a very Apocalypse Now story. I think the director in an interview tried to distance it from Apocalypse Now, but it's a very Heart of Darkness story, and it's about how that feeling of revenge can overtake you and change you. And it's not bad. It's probably the second weakest movie of the bunch for me. Oh, maybe third. I think I would put it. I don't know if I'd probably put it a little bit above Kid Thing, but it's one of those movies, again, that kind of, you watch it and you're like, okay, good, and you move on. The photography will stick with you, but it's a film so preoccupied with violence and sexuality and just wanting to show, like, look at this penis. This penis has a leech inside of it. Here's some penises bathing. They're masturbating now. Let's talk about penises. Oh, this is the remnants of a guy. Look at his head. It's very carefully detailed. Let's get a nice long shot of this butchered body, which I don't have a problem with. I'm obviously not a prude in that regard. I watch some fucked up shit, and I love fucked up shit, and I enjoyed this fucked up shit. But it almost feels like it's utilizing those elements instead of telling a legitimately compelling story. And that's where I had my one big problem with it. I did not feel like I was watching a particularly compelling story. Beautifully shot with some really cool visuals. Do not get me wrong. In fact, I highly recommend you watch this. And I think it's one of those movies that is exactly why I subscribe to Mubi, because I would not have watched this otherwise. There's no real reason for me to watch this. But I watched it, and it gave me some great gave me some great visuals. It made me more interested in the Indochina War, which I really have very little knowledge about. It gave me a lot of dick. A lot of dick. If you want to see Gaspard Ulliel's penis, then this movie's for you. But yeah, it's so interested in detailing debauchery that it just, I don't know, it feels gratuitous, which is weird for me to say. I do like that it does not really show much action. It really shows the results of the action. I think that's a great way of kind of doing an anti-war movie by eliminating the battle aspect and just showing the butchered bodies and the ugliness. I think that's very smart, but that can only take you so far. I understand that Gerard Depardieu has to be in every French movie. I know it's in his contract with France that he is in literally every French film. He feels really shoved in here. It comes into play at the end when the director kind of starts wrapping up all of his themes. But it does just feel like, hey, is Gerard Depardieu not passed out in a drunken mess right now? All right, let's get him in here. Slight negative. Still a very good movie. Just, it's fine. It's very good, but you finish watching it and you're like, that looked pretty. Moving on. So, recommend it if you just want to watch a pretty easy kind of war epic. It's only like 99 minutes or something. Very easy watch, quick and easy. There's some unfortunate sexual violence you might not find so enjoyable. I didn't really like the there's this Asian prostitute stereotype I see a lot that I'm not a huge fan of, but that's fine. She gets maybe not quite enough to do, but she gets stuff to do. There's also a kind of graphic kind of post-rape scene that, I don't know, it helped to cement the main character's madness, but at the same time, it just feels gratuitous. And I think that's the real problem here is it just feels gratuitous. Yeah. So yeah, that's it for this week. We'll see how this edits together. If this comes out reasonably non-garbled, then we'll keep doing it on a weekly basis. If I find myself watching a movie that I really want to talk about in depth right away, I might change it up and do like a 3-movie video or a 1-movie video, just depending on what comes out. But yeah, this has been a really good week for Mubi. I really enjoyed myself, and you should check it out. And yeah, subscribe, like, do all those things, and watch more movies, man. Wee!